Hey guys, the Firebird here, and today I have a different video than what I usually do. Typically I do Transformers Explains or I talk about the news. This is more of a controversy that's going around that we recently just found out. Now, I can't take credit for this. Lazloven was the first one who covered this, so I'm kind of just, spreading the word and giving my 2 cents on the whole situation. And this has to do with the whole Netflix War For Cybertron voice acting debate that we have going on. Typically, people debate whether the voices in the War For Cybertron Netflix series was good or not. Like, some people say that the voices feel off, that they're not that good. Some people say that we need to have new people at the helm because we should try and include more people, give more people a chance. So it's fine doing this and not getting Peter Cullen or a bunch of other famous Transformers voice actors. Frankly, I kind of agree with both sides. I do feel that we should give more people a chance. But at the same time, I do agree with the people that have a problem with the voices in War For Cybertron's Netflix because there's something off about it. Now, originally, I agree with Comedy Cam's point that we're so used to Peter Cullen, we're so used to Soundwave, Shockwave, Bumblebee, and everyone else like sounding one way that whenever we get someone new, it feels off, it feels weird. It's just not, it doesn't fit, it feels wrong, basically. And, I kind of agree with him, maybe that's the case, it just feels off to us, but in reality, there's nothing wrong with it. And there was a debate going around. But now, I'm going to have to say that this is no longer a debate. Before this was a debate, but the whole thing changes when actual professional voice actors get involved and give their 2 cents as to how they feel. Now, recently there was an interview with Peter Cullen and Frank Welker about the Netflix series, and they kind of threw some shade at the Netflix series and the performance of the actors in the series itself. Now, I'm gonna let that clip play out, and the clip belongs to Ultratron563, so I'm gonna put his channel and the link to his video in the description down below, in the comments down below, so you guys can check the full clip for yourselves. I'm just gonna show you the really relevant part.
It's kind of an unwritten law in the business that we come from, and when we grew up in the business, is you just don't do that. We never take over anybody's voice who can't do it themselves. You just don't do it. But
yeah, it's grand theft. Yeah, that's happening now with Netflix. They're going to produce a Transformers series, but they're not going union, and we work in our union. That's what protects us all as actors. When other guys, go underneath that. And they literally are, they're destroying the union from outside. It's subterfuge. It's just, it's wrong. It's wrong. But that's what's going to happen with this series. It'll be somebody else doing Optimus Prime. And that hurts. That hurts. Yeah, don't let it happen.
Yeah.
Get on Netflix.
they're bad. That's not nice. But ultimately, we do everything for you. So you're the audience. You're the power. So what you want will ultimately be the end. So you decide what you want, and hopefully it's good.
Thank you. The Bumblebee movie. They hired another person to do me for during the production, and then they were going to bring me in for one day because they didn't want to pay me, for any more than they had to. So this guy worked for 3 or 4 months, and when I came in, they had actually recorded this guy, and I had to impersonate him, impersonating me. And his timing was wrong, and his inflections were wrong. He didn't know how to drag a vowel, or he didn't know how to make Prime sincere. So he'd skip over the things that did, and I went, wow, this is horrible. But I had to mimic him because they had already animated to his sound. And that's why he doesn't come across all that great in the movie. The long shots I'm okay on, but the close-up stuff, if you watch that movie, you'll see I was sickened by it. It hurt.
Okay, so now that we're done with that, we can take a couple of things from it. Now, people say that he gets tired of doing Optimus Prime all the time, that he's basically sick of doing it and he wants to do other things. But here, Peter Cullen really did wanted to do Optimus Prime. His voice, his expressions, they say it all. It's not a question of whether he wants to or not. It's a question that was he invited to do so or not. And something interesting that he mentions is that the reason why he wasn't invited, as well as some other, notable Transformers voice actors, is because they were part of a union. Now, I'm not gonna go in depth as to what a union is. Basically, think of it like a group or association that basically protects your rights and pushes companies and other entities to like pay their voice actors what they rightfully deserve. And apparently, from what Peter Cullen says right here, is that the voice actors from the War For Cybertron series were non-unionized, so meaning that they don't have to pay them a certain amount, meaning that they can pay them less to appear in the series. Now, that's not to say that I dislike the voice actors of the Netflix TV show. There are some of them that I really like, and there are others that I actually gonna have a problem with. Elita 1 and Bumblebee, who's voiced by the guy who voiced Claude in Fire Emblem, are probably my two favorite voices of that series. Will Takataki was also pretty well as a few others. But then there are other performances that sound weird, sound off. Now, initially, I thought of this like, Common in Cam's argument that I'm so used to hearing Shockwave or Soundwave or Ironhide one way that whenever I hear all of these other voices for those characters, it feels weird, it feels off. Besides the interview, we also have a Facebook post by Gary Chalk, the guy who voiced Optimus Prime in Beast Wars and Optimus Prime in the Unicorn Trilogy. And I really like the guy, I really like the way he does his Optimus Prime voices, so much respect to the guy. And he basically said, okay, I watched the first episode of the new Transformers on Netflix. Everyone tries to sound like a tough guy, and as a result, they all have the same pace and delivery. Visually it's pretty good, but I'm sorry, the voices were kind of low energy. And I think he does make a pretty good point, because when I watched the Netflix series, I had to raise up the volume of my TV to 55 or something really high to hear the voices that were kind of low energy. Not that, notable and not that high to the point that I could hear it very well. And everyone does sort of sound the same, which is a big problem when you have a series with this many characters. Watch Transformers Prime and close your eyes. If you listen to the Autobots having a conversation, you can easily tell who's RC, who's Bulkhead, who's Ratchet, who's Optimus Prime. But with the Netflix series, it's a bit harder. You can tell who's Elita 1 and maybe who's Chromia. And of course, you can tell who's Bumblebee and maybe Optimus Prime, but most characters sound the same, and it's weird and kind of off and low energy. Like the deliverances don't have that much energy to them. And again, this was a debate before, but now that we have someone like Gary Chalk mention this, someone who's, a professional in the business, more or less, when he brings this up, it's basically not a debate, now it's a statement. Now, I understand that Peter Cullen's an elderly gentleman, okay, so giving other people a chance, to take up the role of Optimus Prime, it makes sense. I understand that move, but he said it himself that the reason why they were not in the show is because they were unionized, and they wanted to get people who were not unionized so they don't have to pay them as much. And when you turn it into the argument, it looks like the Rooster Teeth and Netflix didn't do this out of artistic integrity. They keep on saying that Optimus Prime, the reason why they didn't use Peter Cullen is because they wanted to present him as being younger, as being inexperienced. And that's fine. But when, we hear from the mouth of the actual Optimus Prime, Peter Cullen doesn't just, voice Optimus Prime. He is Optimus Prime. Much like Mark Hamill is Luke Skywalker. Peter Cullen based Optimus Prime off his brother, who was basically a Vietnam War veteran, who sadly also passed away. So Optimus Prime has some deep-rooted significance to Peter Cullen. It's not just another character that he's voicing, it actually has emotional attachment to him. And in the whole interview, you can tell that he cares deeply for the character's voice and its legacy. He really wants to appear in the Netflix series. Now, he could still appear, and Frank Welker did make a good point that if the fans want Peter Cullen to appear, then, we can always push for Netflix and Rooster Teeth to actually include Peter Cullen. And it's always possible in terms of the story. You could say that Optimus Prime kind of matures as the story goes along, and his voice gets deeper, or he gets some wisdom from the Matrix that kind of, upgrade Optimus Prime, makes him stronger, or change his voice. You can always write Peter Cullen into the story. There's a lot of possibilities for that. There's a lot of ways you can go about it. But the question is, does Rooster Teeth and Netflix want to do that? Do they want to put in the money to include, Peter Cullen and Frank Welker and a lot of the other, OG Transformers voice actors. You can always do that, but not, of course, not replace everyone. I feel like there are a few voices that can stay, like Elita 1, Bumblebee, maybe Megatron. I know that's the same Megatron that was in the Combiner Wars trilogy, and he was actually pretty good in it, but in here he feels, again, trying to sound like a tough guy, and as a result the same pace and delivery it's shared by everyone. The voices and the performances are kind of low of energy. I feel like Rooster Teeth kind of put a whole lot more effort into the story and the animation for it, and sadly neglected the voice acting for it, for the series. But again, not everyone sounds bad or off, but it's a problem that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed if Everest is gonna be, better than Siege. So the debate has changed from the voice acting being good or bad to now whether it was justified for Rooster Teeth to basically, cut costs and just hire some cheap voice actors to do the voices. Now that's no offense to the actors. Again, I like Elita 1 and I really respect the man behind the voice of Bumblebee. So I'm sure that they're talented people in their own right, but the direction that Rooster Teeth took with the voices and the performances, I feel like they could have been done way better. And if we had some veteran Transformers voice actors in the series itself would have been a whole lot better than it actually was. Now this is not coming from a guy who's like a G1 purist or that believes that only Peter Cullen can be Optimus Prime, because I know I'm gonna get some of those people, and I'm gonna say that for half my life Peter Cullen wasn't my Optimus Prime. I grew up in another country besides America where we didn't speak English, and that should be pretty obvious, and we always had a dub, someone else that voiced Optimus Prime in basically my native language. So for half my life Optimus Prime was someone else, and even then I didn't really pay too much attention to the guy. It's only when I came to America and I started seeing the movies here and I started watching Transformers Prime and a bunch of other Transformers products that Peter Cullen himself became my Optimus Prime, the one that I'm so used to hearing. So I don't really have a preference to Peter Cullen being solely Optimus Prime. I'm willing to give people a chance, but for this time around, and the fact that it is Netflix, they said it themselves that they want to reach a large audience with the Netflix series. I feel like they should have brought Optimus Prime. They should have treated this more seriously like the movies. Netflix is basically a 2-hour long movie, so they can always have brought Optimus Prime to the table. And Peter Cullen can definitely do a young and naive Optimus Prime impression. In Transformers Prime, during the Orion Pax arc, Optimus Prime was basically that. And Peter Cullen, I thought he did a pretty good job voicing him, as a bit of a more naive Optimus Prime. So he definitely has the talent for it, he definitely can do it. And honestly, I feel like it's very disrespectful the way they treated Peter Cullen, just because he's unionized and just because they don't want to deal with all that hassle and they want to cut costs. They didn't do it because of any artistic integrity. They did it because they were sort of greedy, and you can't really blame the whole pandemic situation that's going around right now, because the series was produced before we enter into lockdown, and also when we got that first trailer, the lockdown wasn't even a thing, so you really can't throw that argument. I don't know, guys. I feel like this just opened a whole new can of worms when talking about the War for Cybertron series. Again, I like the story, I really like the art style for it, the animation. The voices is just the thing that's holding back the series. And honestly, the fact that Peter Cullen's being sort of disrespected like this, I don't know. It's kind of upsetting. So I'm just gonna end the video right now. Again, credit goes to Lazloven for reporting on this first. I just wanted to give you my 2 cents on the whole situation, how I feel about it. Maybe you guys feel different about it. Maybe you guys don't feel that Peter Cullen was disrespected and maybe that Rooster Teeth was justified. Or maybe you guys do share my sentiment and are sort of upset by it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I bet the conversation is gonna be interested, but try to keep it civil, okay? Like, I know you either like the show, you either hate it, or this made you change your mind. Just, keep it civil, okay? I'll see you guys in the next video. It'll be more cheerful, I promise, okay? Like, I promise I'll make it more cheerful, okay? For my next video, I might showcase my entire Transformers toy collection. I'm sure that will cheer you up, or something along those lines. So, yeah, take care and stay safe. But anyways, guys, before we go, shout out to our patrons Morais Prime, Mateo, Mario Gordon, Christopher Prime, Stephanie Ballard, and the absolute madman himself, Jordan the Great, who donated $100. Thank you guys for donating, it's much appreciated, and if you guys want to donate to my Patreon, links in the video description down below and in the comments down below. By donating to my Patreon, you get access to some of my videos early, You can request your own videos, you receive a shout out at the end of my videos, you can participate in some of my videos if you so choose, and you get a few previews of some of my new works that are currently in development. There are plenty of rewards that you get as a result of becoming one of my patrons, and I do plan to adding a few more in the future as time goes on and the patrons grow, but keep in mind that donating is entirely optional, because freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Thank you to my patrons for donating, it's much appreciated. And if you guys wanna donate, you know what to do. So yeah, thanks a lot guys.